or A levels. I'm probably not very articulate. They view my life as not very valuable, and I'm not going to get to the head of the queue. Right? That's how these rationing decisions are made. In contrast, if you have free open system in which people have an incentive to provide services, you get more services of the sort that people want. And I would rather have that system than a state rationed system making those sorts of decisions about who gets what care under what conditions. And by the way, politicians are always first in the line without any question under those systems, and their families and their buddies and their friends and everybody else.
Although you said that, can we allow somebody else first?
This is not a medical question, even though I'm a medical student.
Sir,
just want to ask you about the question of secularism, for example. So, how do you perceive secularism, and how can, because I mean, I think in Malaysia is quite a big misconception about this. So maybe we can tackle this.
That's an important question. That secularism has different models. There is a liberal version and an illiberal version. Turkey has illiberal secularism, in which the state suppresses religion in the name of a secular order. And one of the reasons for that is, you know, Kemal Ataturk, his vision of modernization had no room for Islam in it. He was an atheist, and he wanted to suppress religion. He thought religion had made Turkey and the region backward. So crush it, suppress it, destroy it, and create not an Islamic Muslim identity, but instead a Turkish national identity. Socialism, nationalism, Turkishness was his vision. And the greater Turkish nation, which meant suppressing all the other ethnic groups, Kurds, Armenians, and so on, who had a non-Turkish identity. So the secular state in Turkey was a nationalistic, in some ways quite aggressively nationalistic state, socialistic in its orientation, and suppressed religion. In contrast, the more liberal thing that is called secularism, and these are often confused, so that's a very important distinction, says everyone is guaranteed equal freedom of religion, and no religion has a privilege over the other, because the state is about justice, law, and security, and religion is about relationship to God, it's about the good life, it's about the communal exercise of virtue. So that in that context, you have true freedom of religion. I remember I was asked about 2 years ago by a group of journalists from the Middle East, and one of them said, "But of course, you know, it is illegal to build a mosque in America." And I said, "Well, you should travel more. It's the biggest construction industry in the United States is mosque building right now. You go to every little town in Oklahoma and there's a mosque now. It's really quite, the country is being really changed so rapidly. Islam is very rapidly growing in the United States. And there, it's the freedom of the people to decide to build their own mosque. They buy land, they hire an architect, they raise the money in their community to make the mosque that they want to worship in. They don't have to ask anybody's permission. It's their mosque. And they can, there is one question that does come up, which is the call to prayers can be a negative externality on other people if you put it in the middle of a residential neighborhood, right? And so there are some issues that the civil law needs to deal with, but they normally come up with a reasonable compromise, and they locate it in an area where the call to prayers will not be an annoyance to other neighbors who don't want that. If they build here first and other people come, they cannot complain about it, because in English you call it coming to the nuisance. You've come to them already having a mosque. You can't then complain about the call. That would be a violation of their rights. So that's the idea of liberal secularism, if you will. The state is concerned about justice, and it treats everyone the same. Not the Turkish model, in which the state guarantees freedom not of religion but freedom from religion. It's very different.
I want to share something about the model of secularism, particularly Muslim Malaysia, because I've been dealing with some like Islamic society, Islamic works. So when I realized that some of
the market process is about, and then also talk about markets and social justice. In the process, what I would like to do is actually stimulate thinking, not just tell you, look, this is what you should think. That's not very interesting. But to have you stimulate to share your thoughts on these issues. So the first point to begin with is the role of justice in the market. A market presupposes a baseline, as we talked about earlier. So people who suggest that markets are not about justice are showing that they're not thinking very clearly about the foundation of the market system. You can't have markets if you don't have property. Because what are markets? Markets are opportunities for people to exchange titles to property. So that we know that these things belong to Fazrul and not me. If I want them, I need to make an offer to him, to induce him to part with them, to induce him to cooperate with me, to engage in some kind of cooperative basis, exchange. So the very foundation of the market is first and foremost our respect for justice. We can ask later about justice if social justice is something different from justice. The very fact that it has this additional word in front of it suggests to us that it might be not the same thing as justice. It's not an addition to justice, but maybe something in competition with it. If you want to have an efficient functioning market, there are what they call the 3 Ds. It's very easy to remember in English because each word begins with the letter D. The rights need to be definable. Namely, we can define what is yours, what is mine, what belongs to our neighbor. So they need to be in principle capable of being defined. If they are inherently vague, you're going to have problems. Like, for example, my reputation. My reputation is what other people think about me. It's very hard to say how I can have a right to it because it's in all of your minds. So can I have a right, a property in my reputation? Not so clear. That's a very difficult thing to define, precisely because reputation consists in what other people think about me. Now it's also the case that it may be the most important form of wealth that I have. We should distinguish between 2 concepts that are often confused: a property right and wealth. They're somehow connected, but they're not the same concept. I might have as a source of wealth my reputation. People trust me. I'm an honest person, or I have a good eye. I can observe things well. But I don't have a right to that. It's not a property right. And yet it is a very important form of wealth. I might have a certain kind of a skill in my voice if I were a great singer, for instance. I have a property in my body. I can say I won't sing unless you pay me money. But do I have a property in the kind of sounds that I make? Not so clear. Maybe, maybe not. For a well-functioning system of property rights, you need to be able to define them well. The second, they need to be defendable. Namely, that you can go to court of law and defend them. I mean, do you think it's possible to change the light a little bit? To turn the lights down, is that possible? So these are a little easier to see. So I need to have a legal system, so if someone comes and violates my right or takes it away, I can reclaim it. I can receive justice from the legal system. And finally, they have to be divestible. Okay, that's better, thank you. That is to say, that I can transfer them to another person. To divest means to separate myself from the right. And in order to have that, to have a market, you need divestible property rights that can be alienated or sold. And the emergence of such rights is a very important part of the emergence of complex forms of markets. To take a very simple example, if we think about Roman law, the ancient Roman law of land was that you could not transfer it because it was sacred. How many of you have seen the movie Gladiators? Did you see that movie? Okay.